Adventure and Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
Wake up, America! It's time for the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY.com, West Palm Beach's #1 internet radio station. Here's your host, the Pipeman.
This is the Pipeman here on the Adventures of Pipeman W4CY Radio, and I'm here with Justin from Broken Love. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. My internet's been kind of wacky today, so hopefully it won't be a pain in the ass during this interview, but but I definitely I was actually, to warm up for the interview, this is my preparation before an interview, is listening to your newest song before the interview to pump me up.
Oh, nice.
And it is a badass song. Anybody that knows me knows I won't interview bands unless I like the music. And so that's why you're here. And man, Diamonds is a kick-ass new single.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I want to talk a little bit about, okay, so that's the new single coming off of your third full-length LP, The Program.
Yes.
Which is out this month via Spinefarm, so that's pretty cool. But what's even cooler is the story behind this album, so to speak, and what led to this album coming out. So I want you to tell me in your own words a little bit about The Program and how that album name even came about.
Sure. Well, let's see. The short version of it is I basically set up shop in Charleston, South Carolina for what ended up being a couple weeks. I initially was only going there because one of my best friends, he moved there, and I had a lot of time off after the previous album cycle for Black Box. And brought all my stuff. I'm sitting in front of my computer. I have monitors and microphones and guitars and all kinds of crap. And I brought it down just in case. I didn't know if I was going to actually do anything, but I can't stay away from my toys for too long. So I went down there, and after a week, I'm pretty sure the first weekend I got there, we had such an unbelievable time. We made all these friends pretty much immediately. And it turned into this kind of triumphant journey, where I ended up just staying one more week and one more week and one more week. And I started getting all this inspiration from these people and this environment. I'm in Toronto, Canada, which some people may know is pretty grim and cold most of the time. So that change of scenery where it's kind of beachy, it's kind of like Miami vibes. There's palm trees, and all that kind of stuff. And it was in spring. So the environment just really shaped a lot of how I was feeling and kind of got me into a writing zone, should I say. And, I didn't realize I was writing this record until I was basically done. And I was like, hold on, I have 10 songs already. What the hell is going on? And then I realized that I was like, oh, this is it. This is the record. And then we called our producer, Anton DeLoss, and we just booked the time that summer when he was available. And, the name of the record came from, it actually came from my friend. He was the inspiration behind it. He kept saying things like, let's go out tonight. Let's go here because it's good for the program. Or don't invite those people. It's bad for the program. And it started as this kind of joke, just kind of like this little play on life. It's like a motto for how you would live your life, the program. And then all these people we were hanging out with, we started this text group and we called it The Program. And then we called ourselves programmers, and if we were going to go and get spicy margaritas for lunch or whatever, we'd be like, hey, programmers, here's where we're going to be at 12:30. And it kind of grew on me in a way that it came out of nowhere when I was like, okay, well, I'm looking for titles, and I've never named a record after something that doesn't have to do with a song, So I was like, man, The Program, it sounds kind of ominous. It's very mysterious. It could be taken very seriously. People might be like, whoa, that's so deep, when it's really just a name for a fun group of people. And just, literally that's what we used it for. But it kind of became this cool thing. And now, even with the cover art, I could see you're in front of the cover art. It's her face is falling off, you know, her head, and it's like, is that the programming inside of her? Like, so many things with it. And I also thought it was kind of funny to be like, hey man, throw on the program tonight, you know, or
Nice.
we're gonna go watch the videos for the program or something. I feel like it's just a cool play on words too. So that's kind of my long short version.
And that's why I wanted you to tell it, because I love the story, because to me it's so organic, and I think good music has to be organic. I think the hardest thing an artist has to do is a record label says, okay, you need to make an album and it needs to be done by, you know, next month.
Yeah.
And that's not really inspirational. It's like, now it's just like you have to go through the motions to get the job done, instead of having the creative inspiration like you did, and wake up one day and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I have an album, and you didn't even program it that way.
Yeah. It was cool. I had never written a destination record, I guess some people would say, like the way bands used to do. You know, you would hear stories of Led Zeppelin going to this castle in France or something, or the Rolling Stones having like a mobile recording truck and just getting up and going. You know, like nowadays that doesn't really happen as much, because obviously record budgets are like half of what they used to be. But also, it was just kind of circumstantial the way it all played out. Like I remember one time I was writing this one song on the record called Shades of You. And I remember we came back from a club and it was like 4 a.m. and I was like, you know, pretty drunk on a bed with a bass. And I was just like playing this riff and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. You know, and then I would just record stuff like that because, like you said, when there was no parameters, there wasn't like a set deadline from the label being like, you have to do this now, you have to do it by this point, you know, and this is how we want it to sound. I was kind of free to make a record out of my own validity. I actually ended up telling everybody at the label and telling our team, like, hey, I'm ready to make a record. So I got it, you know.
Nice.
It happened much more naturally, whereas in the past, I haven't had that experience as much. Before, it was like, we need the record by now. They never told me how they wanted it to sound. I'm very lucky in that regard. I've never had too many hands or too many cooks.
That's good.
You know, so that's pretty rare.
I'm big against that, so that's cool, because like, all right, I have nothing wrong with business people. I have a problem with business people telling creative people how to be creative.
Sure.
Just like they don't want the creatives to tell them how to run business.
Of course. And you know, in the music industry, as you know, like everybody has to say something about something. Everybody has to get their say in. Everybody's got their own ego. And you know, I'm not going to knock anybody, but it's funny when non-musicians try to tell musicians how to make music. It's like, I understand there's a business aspect to it, but I would never dare tell, like, you know, an engineer how to build a car or something.
Right.
You know?
And I am in awe of songwriters. Like, okay, so I'm a writer, but I write books. And I wrote one song with my bro who was a musician. And it was pretty funny because I brought him the song. He's like, what the fuck is this, a book?
Yeah.
And I said to him, I'm like, yeah, listen, I am that type of writer. I'm coming to you because you'll be able to turn this into a song.
Yeah.
Because I won't be able to eliminate any of it. Because he started with, you know, okay, can we take this out? No, that's really important. Like everything was important. But really, I think a song comes from, you put a bunch of thought, but then you really have to, you know, like narrow it down and get rid of stuff, which is, I find I have a lot of offer, you know, artists, because that must be so hard because it's all like your babies and you have to get rid of some of it. You can't it can't be everything, you know?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you got to be, you can't be super precious about everything, you know? Yeah. And also, I think in part, a lot of what you're describing too, a lot of that kind of falls on a great producer to sort of mitigate the, you know, the clutter of it all, you know. Of course, when you're the one making it, you know, you're too connected. Maybe you can't see things objectively. So
exactly,
I think that's why it's important to have a really, really great producer, which we do. And he is very detrimental and quite literally instrumental to the project, and really, really helped kind of declutter a lot of that stuff and refine things, you know.
Well, that's why I think it's cool, like you brought that up, because like in this scenario, you had like a collective of people that were strangers
Yeah.
that you were getting the feedback from. And I think that's way cool because it's kind of hard to step outside yourself, and it's kind of hard to get people to give you the honest opinion.
Yeah.
So strangers, they'll be right out. They'll tell you straight out what they think.
Absolutely. This is what I've been saying. We've done a couple of these. People keep bringing this up. It's like, it's way harder to tell your close friend how you really feel without hurting their feelings.
Right.
There's no skin in the game between me and said person I just met. Yeah, we might like each other. We're hanging out. We're having a good time. But like, there's not like years and years of emotional dependence on each other,
Totally.
So, which is much unlike, my best friend that I was staying with, because if he gave me criticism, it's like, you got to be careful what you say to me because, I'm sensitive when it comes to him. But
right. Exactly.
But this person or that person, whatever, that we just kind of came into the fold, they could be more objective. And also, it goes both ways. Like, I could tell them how I feel and they could tell me how I feel, and there's like no hard feelings basically because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not taken the same way as as if it's from your best friend.
Yeah. It's like your mom telling you she's disappointed in you versus like your boss. It's like, it hurts way more when it's your mother,
No doubt.
Absolutely.
And I have to laugh too, because you were talking about, the program before, and you're talking about like people not like wondering what it is. And I sit there, when you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, man, in the world that we live in right now, I could almost guarantee you most people, if you didn't tell them what it was, they probably all think it's some political conspiracy.
Yeah, maybe. That's the thing. Like, you can kind of go so many ways with it. Like, what is the program? It's like, did Broken Love join the Illuminati? Like, what I mean?
Or it could be like, oh, are you part of the program to make Canada the 51st state?
You never know these days, so I think it's precisely because of that is why I was chosen. It's very ominous. It's like, what does it mean, man? And here I am telling you what it means to us, but people will make up their own.
Absolutely. And I think it's the best, even with songs. I think the best songs, there's a serious meaning to the artist, but there's a different meaning for every person listening to it. And if you can appeal to everybody and yourself, then it's a good song.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you say you write books. Like, if you're a writer, you understand that you can mean or intentionally write things a certain way with a certain type of meaning behind it. But people are always going to take away their own meanings to everything.
Yeah, just look at texting. Like, how many times do people get into arguments over texting because there's no talent and tonality, so it's misunderstood.
I definitely struggle with that. That's why I get on the phone. You gotta hear the inflections in my voice.
See, I love hearing that because there's so many people nowadays that won't get on the phone, and some things like even in work stuff, like people email me and if it's something that's not like a simple yes, no, I'll call them up and they're like, what's the matter? You don't use email? I'm like, yeah, I use it plenty, but your question requires a verbal response, period.
Right. Yeah, I feel you. I mean, I'm 27, and a lot of people in my generation and younger, I have 4 younger siblings as well. It's like, I was kind of one of the last generations of people that like kind of made it right before everything went super digital,
Right.
Like we still had flip phones, and no Instagram, like when we were in high school for a while, but like, it's kind of funny to see how much it's changed, especially with my younger siblings. It's like, you have to text all the time, where it always surprises people when I'm like, no, you just got to call me. I mean, my friends even know, they just come and walk into my house, like, if you want to get a hold of me, you can just come over,
And there's some people I know, they'll never answer their phone ever because they just want you to text them. Or I love what you're saying too, because one thing trips me out as somebody that is older that lived in a time where there was no cell phones and no internet and none of that. And if you wanted to get a girl in high school, you sat on the phone with them all night long.
Yeah.
The women I meet now, whether they're in your age group or my age group or anywhere in between, none of them like to talk on the phone. And it blows my mind because that's how I grew up. Is like the guys didn't want to talk on the phone, but if you wanted to get the girl, that's what you had to do.
Well, a lot of people actually get scared now if you call them. It's like almost too strong. It's like putting it's too forward almost, which is like,
right.
I feel like a lot of people are just scared of they're scared of accountability nowadays, because if you're talking real time, you might make some mistakes. Like,
right. They can't edit,
you're texting, and now you never really, I think things move a lot slower because of that. And I don't know, I just prefer to be direct, and it's kind of like a mantra, even across everything from who I am and into the music that we make. It's like, we're not we haven't embraced a lot of the modern technology, should I say, as a band. I mean, we still record live. Like
I love
don't
that.
fix things, there's some of our songs, if you put up a click track, like it will move, you know what I mean? There's no tracks when we play live. Like we do everything 100% real, raw, like authentic,
I love that. It seems like it's making a comeback too. Real musicianship. It almost seems like, because there's a few bands like you that they're kind of in that mode, and I'm happy about it, because I got to tell you, some bands I see nowadays, it's like, are you using an algebraic equation to write your songs?
Right.
you know?
Everything has just become so much more, there's just so many corners you can cut nowadays with all the technology, and I'm not knocking on it. There's so many ways things have gotten easier because of it. Like, certainly the advantage of using in-ears live now, it's practically the standard, has changed the game in terms of like saving your hearing and being able to hear yourself and all that kind of stuff. And amp modeling and all that kind of stuff has like gotten rid of the need to lug around gear. Now, we still use real amps, out of principle, but it kind of makes everything sound the same to me when everybody's using the same software, the same plugins, the same. And then now I actually saw, I think it was an article maybe on Loudwire or something the other day. There was a certain singer from a metal band that was like, we're going to try to go back to being more raw. We're going to try to strip back so much of this heavy production, because, it used to be that rock musicians or rock fans had such pride in rock because they were like, it's real music. It's like real musicians, they're really playing. But what a lot of people fail to realize is, at this point in time, a lot of your favorite rock bands are just as produced and just as slick and, as your big pop stars. Everything is beat detected. The drums are basically all fake. The vocals are auto-tuned to hell. Like, that's kind of the standard, nowadays with modern production. And it kind of sucks a lot of the life out of so much of it, which is maybe why I think our band kind of shines through. I don't think we're reinventing the wheel here, but I think just based off the fact that we don't kind of adhere to these modern principles, like, we stand out because we're just not doing.
I think it's more like you're bringing back the wheel.
Yeah, maybe. And there is a few bands that are doing it for sure, but you still don't, I don't want to make a record that sounds like Zeppelin 2. I love Zeppelin, but that's still like a little too dated, obviously. Like, obviously there's more low end now, and you can get a little more clarity out of things and whatever, but there's a fine line that you can walk where it can easily become very like homogenized and very just like dynamically very, very static, and we're not like that. I mean, I want people to hear the record and then see us live and go, oh, that's actually what they sound like.
Right.
Nowadays,
going back to what you originally said about, like going to a destination, I think that's part of what made bands like Zeppelin, the Beatles, and all that great, is not necessarily the destination, but the fact that every album was different.
Yeah, for sure.
Variety
now, and it's tough to find that.
No doubt. Even some of my favorite bands, Like I loved their first couple albums, and then everything after that was just like, just going through the motions. There's nothing there.
You know, it sometimes it bothers me when some of my favorite, I guess, quote unquote, legacy bands start putting out new records and they've kind of adopted that modern production kind of style. And I'm like, oh, now they just sound like everybody else.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
It goes deeper than that, man. I mean, it's like they all have the same producer, they all have the same mixers, they have the same engineers, they're, the same songwriters that are writing a lot of these songs too. So it's like this little world, especially in rock, that's kind of like monopolized the whole thing. And now all these bands, that are in the top 10 at any given time, most of the time it's the same group of guys that are working on it behind the scenes, which is why it sounds that way. And we kind of do everything ourselves. We're kind of more self-sufficient. I write most of the songs. Me and my producer Anton, we write a lot of the songs together, and we try and break free from the mold. And some people call us like a classic rock sounding band, and I don't think that's true, because I don't think we sound like AC/DC or Aerosmith or anything.
And I don't think so either. Like listening to your music, I think it sounds fresh.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
It's like, because I'm with you, as somebody that's been listening to music for my whole life. Like there's a lot of bands nowadays I'm just like, yeah, that just sounds like every other band. And to your point, people don't think of that. If every band's using the same producer, of course it's going to sound the same, because that producer has their way and their mark, that you recognize.
Absolutely.
And if you go back to even the 80s, okay, the metal bands, as an example, in the 80s didn't all sound the same.
No, not even close. Yeah.
And now, like I used to be the type when the older generation would say it all sounds the same. I'd be like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Anthrax doesn't sound anything like Slayer. Sorry. And maybe it does to them, but in reality it doesn't.
Right.
However, you could name 5 metal bands right now that all sound exactly the same.
I mean, you're preaching to the choir. Like I have a few friends that are into a lot of the super modern metal, hard rock stuff. It's not particularly my thing. I mean, sometimes I find things that I enjoy, but it's like I'm kind of over a lot of the kind of like genty, sort of overly heavy things. Like, how much heavier can we get? Especially again with modern production, you could detune your guitar with a plugin like a full 2 octaves down if you want, and it's just at that point it's not even like notes to me,
right?
It's just flubby and it's cool, it's heavy. Listen, I understand why people enjoy it and you can mosh around and have a good time to it, but like especially with rock radio, I mean maybe more so in America than Canada, like a lot of the modern rock on radio in America is like kind of just metal, with
I know it's weird. It's weird to me, as I grew up in a time where the metal bands I liked them because they didn't play on the radio. So it's like really weird to me that a metal band should have radio music. Like it's
like this weird term like active rock, that people throw around. It's like it's kind of just it's like radio metal is what I like to call it, and I guess in a way I see it as like a modern version of like hair metal or something, because I understand that, Rat and Motley Crue and all those bands, that was metal in a way, it was certainly heavier than like 38 Special or like REO Speedwagon or something like that, but I'm kind of getting a little exhausted with that kind of thing. And it's funny too how growing up, metalcore was kind of like really bustling when I was younger. Like that was a lot of what was popular when in terms of like modern rock when I was like an early teen or something like that. How it's all kind of coming back, like everything's kind of cyclical in that sense. And now it's like we're back to metalcore and the genty thing kind of, and I mean, I'm not saying again that we're reinventing the wheel. Some would say, okay, we're just like kind of like Royal Blood or like, Jack Whitey or, I've heard it all,
right.
But there's something about a real band playing that I think you can't take away. you know. And
100%. Like, you know, listen, hate to throw shade, and I won't say who, but if you're going to cancel a gig because you don't have your laptop,
yeah, it's ridiculous.
yeah. I mean, like,
Having
come
a
on.
band to play
I
live.
come,
You
I
know?
come from a time where David Lee Roth was up on stage, forgot the words, ain't talking about love, screamed to 300,000 people, I fucking forgot the words, and they all cheered.
Yeah.
You know?
You know what? That happens at our shows. It's like that's part of the experience, you know.
No doubt.
The basic prerequisite to be a professional musician is you could play your songs. Like,
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
I understand. You know, I understand. I have to be sympathetic to a lot of bands that, like, again, with modern production, the way it's afforded us to basically layer like 100 tracks on a song, you might want to go crazy and make your song sound as big as possible, and then, you know, because of budget reasons, you don't want to hire a third guitar player or hire a keyboard guy or hire a percussionist or whatever. Like, I understand it. I'm sympathetic to the, you know, that claim or that way of playing. But I'm just kind of sick of like producer music. You know, it doesn't sound like bands anymore. It sounds like a producer, like much like the pop world where a producer builds a track and then, you know, the singer comes and they write a song or add some vocals to it. But like, everything in pop is very producer based, and rock has kind of become that. You know?
Totally.
And
I look at it the same here in radio and podcasting. It's like I tell my clients that do shows on our station, it's like, yeah, get rid of your script, get rid of the overproduction, just get on there and have conversations because that's what people want.
Yeah, it's real, and it comes through. It's like, especially live, you know, because I personally believe that if you're going to play shows and you're just going to play the record through the tracks, you know, you're kind of ripping people off.
No
and
doubt.
There used to be a time where I'm sure you know, like back in the day, like you would lose your whole career over getting caught, you know, if you were lip syncing or something like that.
Milli Vanilli, perfect example.
You know, nowadays, not only is it the standard, it's encouraged.
Oh,
you know?
my God.
It's like they would almost prefer you to do that. It just becomes so commonplace that we've kind of forgotten about the idea of just playing, you know.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell you how many tours we've been on where we're the only band that doesn't play the tracks, you know. And it's kind of disappointing in a way because I don't want to fake it. I don't want to give, you know, people a inauthentic experience. I want people to get their money's worth. You know, I want them to have a real experience that's unique to that night, you know. Whereas when you see a band 5 nights in a row and they're just playing tracks every single night, it's the same thing every single night, you know. Of course they sound great live. They're not playing.
Right.
Know?
And you know, it's funny because I go on tour and I do coverage at music festivals all over the US, UK, and Europe. And you know, it's interesting. Even the bands that I love, I'll be at a festival at the end of festival season, and I've seen the band like 10 times already, and I'm predicting I'm saying what they're gonna say in between songs. It's like that scripted.
Yeah.
And like you gotta give credit to bands like the Grateful Dead that never had the same set ever, and they just played, you know, and whatever happened. And I got to think as a musician, that's got to be a lot more fun than doing the same shit every night. That's why I give credit to Bring Me the Horizon. You were mentioning metalcore. I was thinking about that because they get a lot of shade right now for switching up their music. But like, I give them kudos. Listen, you're experimenting, doing you as an artist, and you're going in all different areas. And hey, to me, that's what it should be. And Ollie said in an interview, why do I want to write the same song over and over again?
Absolutely. It's I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. Like, we should progress as artists. And, you know, I'm sitting here, I have a candle of Prince right here. And it's like, what better example of a guy that just kept reinventing himself? Every single record is completely different. And you're building a body of work, you know. It's like, if people want to listen to that version of your band, they can, you know. I don't think it's alienating your audience. I think you're just like a guy like Bowie or something like that. It's like these people were just pushing the envelope again and again and again. Now, needless to say, you know, a band like AC/DC, some would say have been putting out the same records for 30 or 40 years. But there's only a few of those that could just get away with it, and it's just awesome every single time. You know, like I don't want AC/DC to change. Every time I hear an AC/DC song, you know, they put out a few records since I've been a kid. It's always fucking awesome. Yeah, that's magical. That's a different system.
They can pull it off. And then, you know, you take artists that, you know, bands want to hold on to their first albums, you know, the fans want them to stay that way, but what good artist would want to stay a beginner?
Absolutely. And it's kind of why, you know, our third record sounds a little different than our first two. Like, I don't want to keep doing the same thing. You know, we were experimenting with like more R&B elements and funk and even a little poppy at times. Like it had to do something. And I feel like it's your duty as an artist to not give the people exactly the same thing every single time. Like if you want to listen to this era of Broken Love, you can, but the third record especially has to be different. You have to get a little more ambitious, you know?
And you have to get better at your craft. Like, why would you not want to get better? And in getting better, your music is going to change because you know what you're doing more.
Yeah. I mean, you know, everybody, I think at the time was shocked when like 1984 came out with Van Halen, you know, there's all of a sudden there's like keyboards and shit, you know, but
Rush
started at the keyboard era, you know?
Right. And, you know, hate to say it, I am one of those people that I didn't like when they went to that, but I do give them credit for going to that because you can't stay raw forever if you're that kind of musician. And, you know, listen, of course you want to experiment if you're an artist. That's the whole key, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you have every right to. And I don't think you should consider, you know, what people want or expect from you as an artist. It's a line you have to walk. I think definitely like you don't want to disappoint people for sure. But like if you're considering what the audience is expecting from you all the time, then you're not making the music for yourself anymore.
And it's fake then, and they'll see it. It's transparent, in my opinion.
How could you get up on stage every single night and sing songs you don't believe in? Like if you believe in it, it'll come through. And maybe your fans of your previous stuff won't come along with you, but you might make new fans because of that change.
And they'll come back. And I'm a perfect example of that, who went to Metallica's first show ever. And when the Black Album came out, I was like, fucking poser, sellouts, and fuck you. And they're still my favorite band all these years later.
Right.
One of my favorite bands.
And they've built such a huge catalog. It's like, you know, one of the advantages of listening to stuff, basically, you know, by the time I started getting into all these old rock bands, their careers were not over, but they just stopped putting out new albums. Is I can then go back and go, okay, out of these 20 records, I like these ones, you know, and I'm still a fan for life. I'll still see them every single time they come around, but I know when I'm listening to Metallica, I like Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning, you know, and Justice for All is like my era, you know?
Yeah.
Or like I know with Kiss, I'm a huge Kiss fan. I like 70s Kiss era, you know, and then I like Revenge in the 90s, you know, like you can.
And like, I remember I was a huge Kiss fanatic, and I remember when Dynasty came out, and I'm like, what the hell? Because they were like the anti-disco band, and now they were disco, and, you know, but people loved it, you know, and that's the point. It's like sometimes your fan base will change, but the old school people will still be your fan base, even if they act like jerk offs, like I did with Metallica, you know. And you know, you come back, but you can't just always appeal to your garage fans.
And you know, nowadays too, more than ever, people and listeners and musicians are just way less precious about genre anymore.
I love that.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing now because like you said, back in the day when Kiss put out Dynasty, it was like a shot in the foot, a shot in the face of like every rock fan. How the fuck could they go disco? This, and that, and the other. Yeah. Nowadays, bands are doing. I mean, look at the like a band like Sleep Token or a band like if you know who Hardy is, like guys like that. It's like, how do you even describe this? And that's kind of what's amazing about it. You know, you could, like, I was just listening to a podcast with Wolfgang Van Halen and Billy Corgan, and Wolfgang And Billy Corgan joked about like opening for Taylor Swift, and Wolfgang was like, actually, I like Taylor Swift. And it's like, you can just do that now. It's not, nobody gets mad at that.
Yeah. And I come from the time of the gatekeeping bullshit. And it's like, it was so finite. Like, I was a thrash metalhead. You can't listen to anything else. That's it. You know, and it's just so stupid. I've interviewed people nowadays that I was fans of in the 80s, but I never admitted it. And so I tell them on the interview now, I'm like, you know, I'm glad I could admit now that I really liked you, because that fucking gatekeeper shit was bull.
It's bullshit. And, you know, there's two types of music, good and bad.
Right. Exactly.
So it doesn't really matter what you like. I don't think people should be afraid or embarrassed or, you know, to try things that are new or get into things that aren't normally in their world. I think when I was younger, I was definitely more closed-minded, and I was like, it has to be rock. It's always got to be rock. And it has to be old rock, because new rock is not real rock, you know? And
right.
I am probably 20 years after I started listening to rock music, you know, making modern rock music. And now on this record, even adding some disco flavor or like some funk flavor that I never thought I would do, you know, when I was a kid. But, you know, the possibilities are endless nowadays, and people are receptive to it. So it's actually a really, really great time to be a musician in a lot of ways.
Well, that's the program, right?
That's the program.
So tell everybody how they can reach out to you guys on socials, on the web, how they can get the new album, and tour dates and all that good stuff.
Well, you know, we're on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. It's all just at Broken Love Music. Our website is just brokenlove.com. Everything is on there as well. We're on Spotify, Apple Music. Anywhere you can find music, we're there. We're on YouTube. You put in Broken Love, you spell it the way we spell it, BRKN. Very stupid, but we're kind of committed to it now. You'll find us. So just keep an eye and an ear out, and you know, maybe we'll come to a city near you at some point.
Nice. Any other last words you want to share with the listeners?
Thanks for listening to me yap for a while. I appreciate being here. If you're a fan of the band, thank you for sticking around and being patient with us while we're, you know, it's been a while since we put out some music. And you know, stay true to yourself. Don't let anybody tell you what to do. Who cares?
No doubt. And stick with the program.
Stick with the program. Stick with the program.
No doubt. And it was worth the wait. So everybody, definitely have to get the album when it drops, because it is definitely worth the wait. It is the program for your life.
Yes.
So get the album. Thanks a lot for making us great music, and thanks for being on the Adventures of Pipeman.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.